What's happening? What's good with y'all? I knocked off early today, so we're going to have a conversation about Christopher Yvette versus Jackson Mcvey. I don't know if I'm saying his name properly. Let me actually double check if this is truly McAfee or is it Pat McAfee? Yes, it's Christian McAfee. Um, I don't know, man. This is going to be a little bit of a tricky fight because I think both of them are on decent streaks. I mean, McAfee, Yvette is on a seven fight win streak, which is quite impressive, and it's honestly worth mentioning, especially when you consider the fact that they've been on a streak longer than they became professional athletes. For example, Jackson McAfee, if I'm not mistaken, is on an 11 fight win streak and has only six pro fights. If I'm not mistaken, let me actually double check. I'll have to double check, but yeah, I think Jackson McAfee has like six pro fights, but he's on an 11 fight win streak or something to that effect. So that's kind of impressive in my opinion. I honestly, it's kind of hard to actually tell how good both of them are individually. Yvette, for example, let's start off with what do you call him? Christopher Yvette. So Christopher Yvette is ranked number 44 in North America. I mean that's kind of crappy in my opinion. Like to be ranked 44, but I mean he's coming in on short notice, so I get that the UFC took whoever they could find as long as they were undefeated. Is he undefeated? Yes, he's undefeated. So Christopher Yvette is undefeated. He's ranked number 44 in North America. Um, he has about five TKOs and no submissions. I mean, he has a pretty decent finishing rate at 71% finishing rate. He's on a seven fight win streak, which is quite impressive in my opinion. I don't know, man. I don't know if it's kind of hard to actually tell who is going to be a little bit better in this particular situation, purely because both athletes are coming off of the content. I mean, they are coming off of other promotions. However, Yvette has been fighting pretty decent competition. Before this, he beat someone who's 5-0. Then before that, 5-2, 11-9. And so let me actually go back and check the like Yvette's history. So let me actually start from the top. So in his previous fight, he beat Reese Watkins, who was 5-0, who was undefeated, which is quite impressive. I mean, not impressive, but at least he's beating undefeated fighters, as opposed to what do you call him, Elvin or something like that, who's fighting Jonathan Diniz. That guy didn't beat the one with more than four wins. That's quite sad, to be honest, for someone who's actually fighting in the UFC. This guy, Christopher Yvette, the people that he's been fighting in Fury, his previous opponent was 5-0. Before that, the opponent was 5-2. Not too bad. Before that, the opponent was 11-9. Not great, but still, fighting someone who has 20 fights in even if it's outside the UFC, is kind of experience enough. Before that, he fought someone who's 3-0, and as you go further down, the records become a little bit shaky, which is understandable. I mean, he was making his debut, but I like the fact that as time progressed, Christopher made sure that he tries to improve the level of competition that he's facing. Um, instead of just continuously fighting cans. And obviously, you might make the argument that even though these people, some of these people were undefeated, maybe they were also cans who were fighting unknown people. I'm not going to dive too deep into that, but before I break down Jackson Mcvey, let's look at his previous opponents. So Jackson Mcvey is also undefeated at 6-0 if I'm not, yes, at 6-0. So Jackson McAfee in his last opponent in the LFA was 4-1, not too bad. Before that, his opponent was 3-2. Before that, his opponent was 7-13. Shit. Before that, his opponent was 1-1. Before that, 2-5. Before that, 5-5. Okay, because of the level of competition, I'm a little bit worried now. I'm a little bit worried. Obviously, Jackson McAfee has a 100% finishing rate, but when you look at the competition that he's been fighting, it's honestly pretty trashy, to be honest. He's ranked number 52 in North America, so he's ranked lower. He's ranked lower than what do you call him? Yeah, now I'm just rethinking my pick now because I actually picked Jackson McAfee. Um, but man, I'm starting to actually doubt myself here. I'm starting to doubt myself because based on the level of competition, number one, and it makes sense. And I always tell my subscribers, especially the people who watch my breakdowns, I always tell my people that whenever you hear me speak about someone's ranking, especially when they are coming outside the UFC, I'm not just saying this because rankings are just something I just value for absolutely no reason. If you don't know enough about a specific fighter, their ranking sometimes is an indication of the level of competitions that they've been fighting. And when you look at the level of competition that Jackson McAfee has been fighting, it makes sense. KP Vlog, hello man, welcome to the stream. So it makes sense that Christopher Ewert is ranked number 44 above Jackson McAfee, and they are ranked in the same region, which is North America. Maybe they haven't fought each other, or maybe they have been fighting in different promotions. I'll have to check. But still, the mere fact that they are fighting in the same region and Christopher Ewert is ranked higher than Jackson McAfee is an indication of the fact that he's been fighting better competition, right? And that is illustrated by the fact that now that as I was going through it, I was like, shit, it looks like Christopher Ewert has actually been fighting better competition than Jackson McAfee, and I actually ended up picking Jackson McAfee. My subscribers also picked up Jackson McAfee, but in my analysis of this particular fight, to be specific, I didn't actually check the level of competition, especially because they are regional fighters. So I was like, okay, they are coming from LFA. I don't feel like they've been fighting that great of a competition, either of them. When I look at it, when you consider the fact that Jackson McAfee has been fighting people who are like the best opponent that Jackson McAfee has faced was his last opponent, and that guy is 4-1. That's terrible in my opinion. That can't be your best opponent. And then when you look back beyond that guy who was 4-1, you find a guy who's 3-2, 7-13. I mean, it gets worse from here. 1-1, 2-5, 5-5. Like it gets worse, right? So as far as level of competition, fine. Jackson McAfee has a 100% finishing rate. But beyond that, what else does he have? I get that Jackson McAfee maybe might be a little bit more well-rounded. Maybe he might be able to use the wrestling to actually find a way to win the fight. And because of that, I'm going to stick with my pick of Jackson McAfee. But I can promise you now, I even think, let me actually check the odds. I think Christopher Yvette is actually the favorite in this particular fight. And I wouldn't actually be surprised. It makes more sense to me that Christopher Yvette is the favorite in this particular fight, largely because I think he's been fighting better competition, man. I'm only going to go with Jackson McAfee purely because he's a wrestler, and because of that, he's probably going to have pretty decent, what do you call it, cardio. Normally, wrestlers will normally have better cardio than strikers, right? Especially if you wrestled someone. So with 3 submissions, I mean, it's not the most impressive thing, but it just shows that he's a little bit more rounded than Christopher Yvette. But man, I'm not particularly confident in this particular pick. Let me actually just see if Christopher Yvette is actually the favorite in this particular fight. Last time I checked, I think Christopher Yvette was actually the favorite, which makes sense. He's ranked higher, he's fought the higher competition. The only disadvantage that I see is that I don't feel like he has decent enough grappling, or at the very least from what I've seen, I don't think he's because all I did was watch like a few highlights and a couple of their fights actually. But now that I'm looking at the ranking, but what do you see? What do you call it? Level of competition. It makes me second guess my pick. Let me actually check who's the favorite here. Jackson McAfee. Yes. Christopher Yvette is a minus 150 favorite. Obviously, it differs with different sports books. But yeah, Christopher Yvette is the favorite, and it makes more sense. He's ranked higher, which means he's been fighting better competition, which is reflected in the level of competition that he's been fighting. Whereas Jackson has been fighting, to be honest, trash cans. So I can see Jackson McAfee losing this one, but because of the wrestling, I think I'm going to stick with him. But yeah, I think Jackson, Christopher Yvette probably should be the favorite, and I think it's close. Clearly, it shows that even the odds makers can tell that Jackson McAfee might have the wrestling advantage, but I still feel like, I don't know, man. The level of competition counts, and I think Christopher Yvette might have an advantage. But officially, my subscribers and I are going with Jackson McAfee. I guess it is what it is. Let me reply to you guys, and then I can bounce. KP Bada Vlogger, how are you? I'm good, man. How are you? John Luke, salam alaikum, brother. Wa alaikum assalam, my brother. Rene the Lord, hello, Unfest. What up, my guy? Rene the Lord, I'm so late. Who did you go with? I, I normally don't repeat my breakdowns, but let me summarize it for you, my guy. You are one of my most loyal subscribers, so I'll do that for you. So I went with Jackson McAfee, right? And the subscribers also went with Jackson McAfee. But this is based off of the little footage that I saw of both of them. But at this point, I'm honestly second guessing myself, largely because if you look at the level of opponents or the level of competition that Jackson McAfee has been fighting, it's pretty much trash cans. The best opponent that he's ever had was 4-1, and it's the previous opponent. When you go back, he fought someone who's 3-5. Before that, 7-11, something like that, 5-5, 2-3, something like that. Whereas when you look at Christopher Yvette's record, he's been fighting pretty decent, like people who have over 25s, 11-9. Not the greatest record, but it shows that he's been fighting a bit more experienced fighters, right? And it's not only that. Let me actually go to, just that my laptop is a little bit slow, so it's kind of frustrating. But let me actually try and go back and just read the records of the people that Christopher Yvette has been fighting. Because Jackson McAfee, I can tell you now from the top of my head, the best opponent that he's ever fought was what do you call it? Was 4-1. Before that, I think it was something like 3-2, like 2-5, something to that effect. And then before that, it was 5-5, 1-1. It was terrible, man. Like it was honestly terrible. And they are fighting in the same region in North America. Both of them are fighting in North America. Christopher Yvette is ranked number 44, and what do you call him? Jackson McAfee is ranked number 52, which basically highlights the fact that Christopher Yvette, in my opinion, that signifies that Yvette has been fighting better competition, and it's reflected in the level of competition. Let me actually read you the records of the previous opponents for Jackson. Let me start with Jackson McAfee. So Jackson McAfee in his previous fight fought a guy who was 4-1. They call him who's his name? Matao Gamer. I don't know how to pronounce that. Before that, he fought a guy who's 3-2. Same, both fighters are fighting in LFA at this point. And then before that, he fought a guy who's 7-13. Oh my flipping shit. He fought a guy who's 7-13. Before that, 1-1. Before that, 2-5. Before that, 5-5. This is everything that I just mentioned now is Jackson McAfee's pro career, right? Let's go to Christopher Yvette and look at like his pro career, and let's see in comparison who has been fighting better competition. Okay, here we are. So Jackson, what do you call him? Christopher Yvette. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name properly. His previous opponent was 5-0. The opponent before that was 5-2. The opponent before that was 11-9. Before that 3-0. Before that 4-5. Before that 0-10, and before that 1-0. That is Christopher McAfee's, Christopher Yvette's pro career in a nutshell, right? So based off of if I think I was messed up by watching tape, but based off of the level of competition, it makes sense now why the other guy would look like he's struggling in a fight, because he's fighting actually pretty decent competition, whereas the other guy looks like he is a world beater who has 100% finishes, and then you look like, oh my goodness, this guy is such a terror. And you realize it's because he's fighting horrible competition. That's why he's doing that to them. Right? The other guy is struggling because the people that he's fighting are actually pretty decent. Even I wouldn't go as far as saying they are good, but at the very least they have a little bit of experience. And I think that's something I didn't take into consideration. But I concluded with the fact that I still feel like the fact that Christopher Yvette has only ever won via TKO and has no submission, whereas Jackson McAfee has 3 submissions. He seems like he's pretty much well-rounded. He has like a submission, 3 submissions and 3 TKOs. It feels like he's a little bit more well-rounded. And because of that, especially because they're so early in their careers, I think I'm leaning more towards the grappler, even after finding out that the person that I'm picking is probably trash and is probably going to get knocked out in the first round. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I get you, but I think Christopher Yvette, and I actually never look at the odds, to be honest, but even when I check, the odds say Christopher Yvette is actually a favorite, a minus 150 or something like that favorite, which makes sense. The guy has more experience, right? So, I don't know, man. I'm still going with Jackson Mcvey. I probably will regret this on fight night. And I'm only going with him because of the grappling. Like, normally, striker versus grappler, especially so early in their career, I can see a situation where, what do you call him? Jackson McAfee just sits on him, or rather does nothing with position, but does just barely enough so that the referee does not break them up, and then gets a boring decision. Or alternatively, I mean, Yvette's takedown defense might be horrible, and he gets taken down, and his defensive grappling is equally horrible, and he gets submitted. At this point, that's what you get when you are trying to predict regional fights. You're going to get horrible, horrible results. But in this situation, it comes down to what are you going to value? Are you going to value the guy who has a bit more wrestling? And historically, wrestlers have had a bit more success as far as debuting in the UFC, and even beyond that. Normally, wrestlers, especially people who have some type of a base in wrestling, who go against, especially early in their careers, they normally win against strikers, right? Unless if maybe cardio is honestly terrible. So it comes down to what you decide to go with. Either you're going to go with the experienced guy, which I think is Christopher Yvet. The level of competition that he's been fighting is exceptional. Not exceptional, but when you compare both of them, but also taking into consideration that Christopher Yvet is coming in on short notice. Even though Jackson McAfee was coming in on short notice, he's had a little bit more time to prepare for the fight, right? He's had a little bit more time to prepare for the fight. I don't know if I should call Cedric Dumas higher level competition, but at the very least, Cedric Dumas has a couple of wins in the UFC. So Jackson McAfee was preparing for Cedric Dumas, who is a bit more well-rounded. Even though he's not the best fighter, he was giving Nursultan Ruziboyev problems, and Ruziboyev actually had to cheat in order to actually find the finish in that particular fight. That's my opinion, right? So at the very least, like, he was preparing for somewhat of a decent competition, UFC level competition, even though it's not the best competition, but it's someone who has some wins in the UFC. So I feel like Jackson McAfee, even though both of them are coming in on short notice, Jackson has had a bit more time to prepare, and he was preparing for someone who's a little bit higher in terms of levels than, what do you call him, Christopher Yvet. And then on top of that, Christopher only has TKOs. That honestly worries me. I didn't watch all their careers. I just watched like a few things just to get the sense of who might actually have an advantage. And I feel like in this situation, I have a feeling that Jackson McAfee might have a bit of a grappling advantage, but he might be chinned, you know? But once again, it's also worth mentioning that McAfee, what do you call it? Yeah, Jackson McAfee has 100% finishes outside the UFC. So this is a guy who's going to come in and try and finish the fight, right? So maybe short notice will favor him. This guy maybe might not be able to prepare adequately, and they're not ranked too far apart from each other. But when I look at the only thing that concerns me about this particular pick is that one guy, the guy that I'm picking, that's the only disadvantage on his side, and I hate that because this guy has been fighting trash cans. Like, there's no way to defend that. He's been fighting trash cans, and then on the other hand, the other guy has been fighting pretty decent competition, right? It's like the people before, I mean, like, look at the people he's been fighting: 5-0, 5-2, 11-9, 3-0, 4-5. Whereas when you compare the other guy, 4-1, 4-5, 3-7, like 7-13. Like, Jackson McAfee is so disappointing, man. Like, I hate that they're putting us in this particular situation to pick between these two people. In any case, I don't know, man. I'm going with Jackson McAfee. He might get knocked out based on my analysis. I don't know why I never listen to my own analysis. And I can see myself during the watch along. Oh my God, I said it. I even said it, but you didn't choose him, dude. Like you criticized your own pick, but you didn't even listen to yourself. But yeah, I'm still going with Jackson. I feel like the only disadvantage for him is experience. Everything else, I think, is in his favor. Um, let's see if that's going to be enough. Let me reply to you guys. Ash, Renee, that is Lord. I think Jackson by sub. It's possible, my guy, but it's kind of an interesting fight. Antonio, what do you on, little bro? I don't know, cocaine, I guess. What do you mean by that, dude? Oh, sorry. Maybe I didn't understand your question. I'm talking about UFC. I thought you were. I mean, I'm used to people trolling me. That's why I respond like this. Shoshat Maggie, UFC is LFA 2.0. Ah, Shoshat Maggie, welcome to the stream, my guy. UFC probably gave out 100 contracts or more just this year, and we got half the year to go. Yeah, that's actually true, and it sucks that the level of competition is dropping, just so that they can just flood people into the UFC, so that they can make more Apex cards for us, right? I don't feel like the UFC is working really hard to develop fighters. Not develop, but at the very least, find quality fighters. Let me say it like that. Shoshat McGee, Dumas goes to jail for his fight camps. Free food. Free food, exercise equipment, and free sparring partners. Wow. I'm Shoshat McGee. Charles started cutting water weight yesterday morning. He's cooked. Yeah, I think his chin is gonna be gone. If that's the case, his chin is going to be depleted, that's for sure. Renee, there is Lord, what if he misses weight or something? I mean, if he misses weight, I still do think that the fight is going to happen. But I think what's going to happen, it's the situation with what was happening. I think Davison Figueiredo versus who was he fighting? I forgot. So the title was only on the line for the other guy and not for Davison Figueiredo. The first time Davison Figueiredo fought for the flyweight championship, the other guy was eligible to win the title, but Davison Figueiredo was not eligible to win the title. So the fight was happening, and Davison Figueiredo actually won, but he didn't become a champion. And then they rescheduled the match, if I remember correctly. And then that's when Davison Figueiredo actually became a champion because at that fight he actually made weight. So the fight will continue, especially considering this card heavily relies on the main event because when you remove the main event, I mean, based on the performances of the videos on my channel, I think the UFC, I think a lot of people don't understand why the UFC have put Joshua Van and Peyton Talbot in the main card. Peyton Talbot's videos and Joshua Van's videos are the biggest videos on my channel. For UFC 317 by far. Ilya Tuporia does not even come close to their numbers, right? Maybe it's the algorithm. I don't know what everyone else is experiencing, but I'm talking specifically about my channel, right? When we talk about my channel, even in the community section, if you go into the community section and you look at the votes, Ilya Tuporia, that's the only place that Ilya Tuporia versus Charles Oliveira did pretty decent numbers. For example, on one voting poll, I saw that like one voting poll had like 600 votes, right? But when we talk about videos, specifically the shorts, the biggest videos, and by far, I think Peyton Talbot and Joshua Van, by Sunday, after the whole card has happened, I'm confident that both videos for Joshua Van and Peyton Talbot will be over 20,000 views. Right? Currently, they sit at 10,000 or 9 point something thousand. But by Sunday, I'm confident they will be at around 20,000 or even 30,000 views. Whereas Ilya Tuporia, I assume, will be at around maybe 7, 8, or even 10,000 at that point. Currently, Ilya Tuporia sits at 2 point something thousand, right? Maybe it's the algorithm, I don't know. So I think I even went on a rant that no one actually even asked me about. But so, like I was saying, the main event is what's holding this card together. But I think the UFC was strategic in the fact that they know that Peyton Talbot is involved with Frank Ocean, and because of that, people, even especially, are going to be willing to buy the pay-per-view just to see Frank Ocean's, partner, I don't know how to call it, fight, right? That's one. Joshua Van, it also has big numbers on my channel. So because of that, I feel like Joshua Van is one of those stars that people are not aware of. I see it because of my channel. But Joshua Van is also like a really big star. If that's why I say if you go to the community section as well and you look at the numbers for the votes on those particular fights, the numbers are pretty high. And on those three fights, Ilya Tuporia, Peyton Talbot, and Joshua Van, those fights, and I say these people because Joshua Van is currently I have the biggest video on the channel is Joshua Van actually on my channel, and it's happening again. So I think that's why they are on the main card. But like as I was explaining initially, the question that you asked, what if he doesn't make weight? The fight will still happen between Charles Oliveira and Ilya Tuporia. That Charles Oliveira won't be eligible to win the belt, but the fight will still happen. I genuinely believe that. Renee the Realist Lord, that can't be good news. Yeah, it won't be, man. Um, Shoshan McGee or dies KO round one. Then Tyler Ty by KO. I mean, I could see that. Shoshan McGee, I hope I bet on Kai. Shoshan McGee, only Vol can beat the 35 curse, right? Yeah, and considering Charles Oliveira's fighting style, it's not conducive. Volkanovski has always been the kind of fighter who avoids damage. And because of that, I genuinely feel like he's going to have a bit of an advantage. In whenever he's fighting anyone who doesn't have the technical ability to get to him and finish him. So yeah, I think Charles Oliveira has been hit in his prime, and I think he's going to be more hittable as he gets older. So yeah, I don't think aging is going to do any favors for Charles Oliveira. Um, on a D, Jackson seems more patient and a focused person. Yvette got a little bit messy striking, bro, and he got the taken down before. I'm going with Jackson McAfee. That's the thing, though. I repeated my breakdown twice, my guy. I'm sorry, I don't want to repeat it the third time. You can always watch the breakdown a bit later on. I'm also picking Jackson McAfee because of the wrestling element. But Jackson McAfee has been fighting trash cans, whereas Christopher Yvette has been fighting pretty good competition. So that's why I was saying, even in my breakdown, I said this. It's easy for Jackson McAfee to look like a focused and talented fighter when you are fighting me, someone who's never really trained MMA in their life. Yeah, sure, like you can beat me up and look like you are incredible. And obviously, that guy who's fighting, it's kind of like comparing um, Pantoja versus Royval with Steve Erceg versus some unranked guy. Obviously, Steve Erceg is going to knock that guy out. But because those two at the top are high level fighters, it's going to be a lot more competitive because both fighters know what they're doing, right? In that, so it's going to probably go to a decision if they both know what they're doing. That's why I feel like Yvette might seem like he's a little bit messy. He might seem like he's a little bit trashy, but he's fighting pretty decent competition. It might not be UFC level, but it's still good competition, right? So level of competition counts. You can look good, amazing against the trash cans, and which is the people that Jackson McAvey has been fighting. You don't have to take my word for it. I repeated their records twice, or rather the records of their opponents. You can always go back and look at their records for yourself and tell me if I'm wrong. The highest level of athlete that Jackson McAvey has faced has 4 wins, not more than that. He's never fought anyone with more than 4 wins. Those are trash cans, right? And most of the people that he's been fighting have more losses than wins. Those are trash cans. I don't use this word lightly. You hardly ever hear me call people trash cans. But if you have more losses than wins, like, you are a trash can, unfortunately. And Christopher Yvette actually fought pretty decent competition. So that's my biggest concern going into this fight. And it makes more sense to me why Yvette is actually the favorite in this particular fight. Um, Let me see. Shoshat McGee, Frank's boy about to get thrown off the roof by a Brazilian European. You don't want to give them sole credit for beating Peyton Talbot. Shoshat McGee, Charles' body looks like Tony these days. He looks bad. Yeah, I saw him when they were taking pictures of his shorts, and I was like, shit, this guy looks a bit frail, man. He looks like he's going to be slow. But maybe wrong. I guess we'll see. Shoshat McGee, flat belly with no body fat. It's over for him. He will go to 170 after this for a few fights, then retire. Yeah, I was defending him initially, but after seeing him during fight week, I'm like, maybe I was wrong. You know. Joshua McGee, Charles versus Burns at 170 would be fire. I agree, especially because they are a little bit older. But I think Burns is a little bit past his prime, more than Charles Oliveira, so I could see Charles Oliveira actually getting that one done. Um, my people, I think I broke this fight down better than I actually thought I would. I thought my breakdown of this particular fight, maybe it's because it's the only fight, so it gave me enough opportunity to digest it. But yeah, I loved this breakdown. It was actually better than I anticipated it would be. So yeah, I mean, I think I gave you enough information to actually consider. Um, Maybe I'll do another stream later. It depends. I might be a little bit busy now, but I'm going to make sure that I schedule it if I'm going to be doing it a bit later on. If it doesn't happen today, it'll happen maybe tomorrow. But I don't like streaming on Saturday, especially because later on I have to stream again for the live watch along. So I also have to edit. I think that the biggest problem I have is that I have to edit best comments of the week, and that's a bit of work. So if I can manage to finish quickly or get to a certain point, I'll make sure that I stream again a bit later on. That's why I try to make sure that I stream a little bit early today. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully, I see you guys later. I love and appreciate all of you. If you're new to the channel, please join me for the watch alongs from the early prelims up until the main card. I'll see you guys later or tomorrow. Either way, I'm always around. Until then, deuces.